Well, hello everybody and welcome to another live. It is an hour later than usual, so thanks everybody for that. Now, some of you may wonder why it was an hour late. It's literally a family-related issue. And also a chance for me to indulge in one of my favorite things of all time. So this afternoon, we went to the Savoy, which I guess many of you have heard of, the famous, iconic Savoy Hotel, because my sister and mother-in-law were down staying with us, and we had their festive afternoon tea. I just want to make sure that I could get back in time for that. It was a fantastic afternoon tea. As you know, I'm a complete addicted to afternoon tea. So it was great to get to the Savoy. I'd actually realized I've never actually been to the Savoy, and we've taken my sister and mother-in-law and my mum when she was alive to different afternoon teas. Anyway, so that's why I was late. So a couple of other housekeeping things. Of course, if you've got a question, write the word question, ideally in capitals if you can. It helps me make sure that I spot the questions from the chat. And then I have a few other bits of housekeeping things. One of which is, one of the things I'm going to start doing on the lives is perhaps throw up an offer or a special offer or whatever that I know people are responding to. So I thought I'd bring this one up because it's proven incredibly popular. I mentioned it once in one or two of my videos, and a lot of people have used it. A lot of people have thanked me for it. So I thought I would just bring it to everyone's attention again as everyone's joining and so on. And that is around shore excursions. So many people are often looking for alternatives to cruise line excursions. They're quite pricey, perhaps looking for smaller groups, tours that don't really perhaps exist, more specialist tours. So I've partnered with Shore Excursions Group. So as one of the providers is obviously Viator, there's Venture Ashore and so on. But what's great about Shore Excursions is if you book one of their tours, on top of promotions actually running at the moment, because they're running some Black Friday promotions, if you use the code TFT5 just before you check out, you'll see at the bottom there, before you add them to your basket, you can check out. You'll get a further 5%. So just something to that. Of course, it's affiliate link, so I do get a commission if you book that. But I thought I'd just throw up some of these kind of offers. One last housekeeping thing is this will be the last live stream, but not forever, next week will be the last live stream. Not this week, next week will be the last live stream. Not ever, just for 2025. And the reason for that is I'm heading off at the beginning of December to do this, what's billed as a 19-night South Pacific archipelagos trip from Sydney to Papeete. And certainly when I was in Australia 2 Christmases ago, when we took my mother-in-law there, it was very problematic trying to sort out with time zones, live streams. So next week, when I'm still in the UK, will be the last live stream for 2025. So we'll think a little bit about that and how we make that perhaps a bit special or something like that. Maybe we'll do a quiz or a draw or something exciting. So anyway, so that's hopefully given people a chance to join. I can see lots of people have joined. A couple of questions. So let's get stuck into some of the questions. John S6C, which cruise line would you recommend for seeing the southernmost part of South America from Buenos Aires to Santiago? Thank you. So John, I will tell you a couple of thoughts. I'll tell you what whoops, I'm just throwing my pen on the floor. I'll tell you what I've chosen. I did that trip a couple of years ago on Holland America on their Amsterdam ship, which is the 2-week. I'd actually did it the other way around from Santiago to Buenos Aires. Obviously, you don't actually leave from Santiago because that's landlocked. I actually left from Valparaiso, but normally the ships leave from San Antonio. It was a fantastic trip. Holland America were fantastic, really good immersion. They had a cruise director who isn't doing it anymore, a guy called Kevin, who's absolutely phenomenal. He lives in Buenos Aires. He knows all the ports. He gave the most amazing talks. But anyway, so I'm actually booked next year to do a bigger part, actually 3/4 of the way around. So I'm going from Buenos Aires all the way around, not doing the little Antarctic sail past part, but going all the way around. And then up through Lima, I'm going to do the Machu Picchu extension, but I keep going through Panama Canal. It ends up in Miami, I think it is, bizarrely, unusually, because normally, no, it ends up in Fort Lauderdale, I think. Anyway, and I've chosen Holland America again, partly because it's quite affordable for a long trip like that. Obviously, they have the wide range of cabins. Secondly, they do, on a cruise like that, it's quite a lot of sea days, so it's nice to have something that has quite a lot of entertainment and stuff. But certainly, they're very good at that. So that's one thing to look at in the premium category, very strong. I would also, though, take a look if you want to go a little bit, if your budget stretches a bit further. I would take a look at, say, Viking. Viking do some very nice immersive. Again, they do that route. What's good about Viking is they have very good enrichment. They have a historian on board. They have someone who knows the region very well. So you really get a great dive into the region. I think you want to understand kind of both the history, the fauna, the flora, all that kind of stuff. Plus, when you're going through things like the glacier area, you want someone who really can talk about the glaciers and stuff like that. So they're a really good option as well. They would certainly be high on my list to look at. But you also have other options. Oceania does it. I think if you're from the UK, I think even Saga does some of it. On our last trip, Saga were there. That's obviously a much longer trip because you're coming out of the UK. What else? You could also do a more, there are some that do a more kind of, I guess, expedition focus, although they tend to go more Santiago down and then may go down and do more of Antarctica. But a couple of them, for example, like Seabourn, I know do. Also, you've got Silversea do some, but they tend to do more part, beginning and end of those. But certainly I had great experience on Holland America. Obviously, Holland America is not for everybody, but it's quite a appealing thing. So I've just got a note here saying that my live stream's not showing up on LinkedIn. So I guess the LinkedIn people won't know because it won't show up. So I need to have a look at that. So a lot of regulars here, Hitty's here, which is great. Jeff's here, Lou's here. Andrew's here, Heike's here. Now, Heike, I suspect that I might have actually been in Miami when your Queen Elizabeth came in, because on the last day that I was flying out, I noticed the Queen Elizabeth was in. So I think you might have been on. I think that's the one you might be getting off. So Sarah from Brooklyn is here. Tom, good. At least it's working on Facebook. If you're surviving November weather after being sunny, warm Caribbean. sorry about that. So yes, I mean, certainly there's this cold snap coming in through the UK when I got back. So I came from like 28, 29 degrees Celsius blue skies into sort of -1 Celsius to 6 degrees Celsius, lots of rain. So it's quite nice escaping in a couple of weeks, heading down to Sydney and warmth, or that French Polynesia area we're sailing through. I guess it's sort of kind of rainy season, but it's warm as well. A couple of people sitting on the West Coast talking about being able to join because the timing's better. See, KM Anderson, for example. Hi there. Warren's here. Let's have a look. Harriet, we're going to be in Istanbul the last week of August 2026, just 3 nights. It seems there are several different neighborhoods in which to stay, and I'm at a loss. Any advice or suggestions? So I do not know a lot about Istanbul. I've only been to Istanbul once, and that was actually many, many years ago on a work trip. So I had no kind of control around where to go. So I know you obviously got the 2 different sides. So if anybody has some good tips on Istanbul, please add those. I've got a feeling maybe Lou, you might have done Istanbul. I can't remember. But if anyone's got great tips, please let us know, because I think I get asked quite a lot about Istanbul. So if there's good things, then do let us know. Scott, very kindly, I've been praying for your health. How are you doing? Doing very well, thank you. I have my 6 monthly checkups, and that's all going very well. Touch wood, and hopefully that keeps going. Oh, Kevin, sorry, yes, I need to apologize to people. So those of you who've watched the Silversea video, where I had a look at my experience on Silversea, particularly Silver Nova, and comparing my experience on Silversea with a lot of the recent reviews, which have been more critical of Silversea. At the end, I referred to one of the series of videos that I've done looking at in-depth comparing cruise lines in a particular category. So I've done one for the mass resort lines. I've done one for the premium lines, that's your Holland America, Cunard, and so on. I've done one for ultra luxury. So that video is, you're right, not out yet. So I do refer to it at the end. But that, I think, video, if I remember correctly, will be already and coming out on Saturday. I thought it was supposed to be out this Saturday, but it's out next Saturday. So it will be out. Now, I have got an early release version of that to patrons, so they have seen that of that. But the full final thing with all the ads and stuff will be out next week. Sorry, I need to take a slug. I've got a frog in my throat. So sorry about that. Normally, normally what I try to do is, if I've got a video that it's even scheduled ahead, is I have that on unlisted, so it kind of, people who get to the end and want to watch it, but that one just hasn't quite worked. So Caroline, did the Viking trip. Oh, so actually did the same trip, so that's good to know, Caroline, as well. Cruise for everyone, good to see you here. The Norwegian Prima class seems to cater for a slightly different market than Norwegian older ships. What are the differences, and does the haven differ? Okay, so that's a good challenge. So certainly for those, I'm sure most people may know, but let me just explain. So obviously Norwegian has different classes of ships. The most recent class is the Prima class. So Prima was the first one, then they had Viva, then they've sort of made it slightly bigger. So you've got Aqua, which is now out and sailing. I booked on that next year. I can't remember when, sort of first half of the year, I think, because I want to try that out. And they made some changes, like they don't have the go-kart on that. They have more of an Aqua thing. And then they've got another in that bigger Prima class. The name skipped me, coming out, I think, next year. So the key difference is, so you're right, of the there's quite a big change as they move into Prima class. So Prima class, to me, I did a whole video about it as well. So you have a look at that video, and anything I forget to mention, I'll pick up there. But one of the key differences is they're following, I think, what's a new concept or the new way of doing cruise ships. I saw it a lot when you look at the Virgin Voyages ship. I think the new Sun Princess ships follow a similar concept, which is actually having smaller venues, more venues, a little bit more spread out around the ships. I guess the idea as these ships get bigger is you want to push people further around the ship, so you disperse some of the people a little bit more. Now, the challenge with the first round of the Prima class is some of the venues were actually too small compared to the demands. So things like the buffet was a little bit too small. The food hall, which is fantastic, where you order things from lots of different stations on a sort of a tablet, and they bring it to your table, is so popular that certainly unless you're on warm sailings where you can use the outside, it gets a little bit too busy. The sort of the rock room and so it gets a little bit busy. The atrium probably lacks some of the the drama. So what a lot of people like about many of the ships like Encore, Breakaway, is that atrium is sort of becomes a hub of entertainment. Where you often have the big screen, you'll have maybe some of the trivia and stuff going on. You'll have some of the bars and restaurants looking down onto the atrium. On the Prima class ships, that's no longer there. So the atrium is more kind of an atrium, and there are some stuff there like guest services, future cruise sales, and stuff like that. But you don't. The atrium is no longer a hub. Like it has Starbucks in there. It's about as vibey as it gets. Quite a big Starbucks area. Shore excursion. So it's less kind of an entertainment center, and that's sort of been spread out. They do have, though, largely speaking, the same sort of specialty restaurants. The other thing which is kind of interesting, so you still have that choice of many bars and things, a little bit more dispersed across the ship. The main pool is surprisingly small. The pool is really, really small. They do have other, around the sort of promenade deck, which is quite nice. It's quite big and wide. They have sort of infinity plunge pools, but the actual main pool's kind of small. So those are some of the key differences concept-wise. So that's why I'm really keen to try Aqua to see if they've addressed some of those issues. In terms of the haven is pretty different. So if you take like Breakaway and so on, the haven, if you've been in the haven, is they have a pool in the center, and then you've got all the sort of the cabins and stuff around. What they've done with the Prima class is at the rear of the ship, across multiple decks, is the haven. And you have so again, you have to get with your card, so it's a closed area. It takes up a lot of the ship, so quite a few decks have haven cabins in. On the main haven deck, then you actually have a pool at the rear, and you have on the top is theoretically an adult area. Then you have the sort of the pool area, so it's more open to the you have nicer views in reality because pool's not kind of inside. There's many more cabins, wider range of cabins. The decor of the cabins is a different look and feel, quite modern. I quite liked it. Now, personally, I quite like the Prima class ships, but they were definitely the diehard Norwegian people found them quite a different concept. So hopefully that all makes sense. As I said, if you take a look at the video, I'll dive into that in a little bit more detail. So I'm going to do this again. Sorry, I got like in my throat, so I have to keep covering that to make sure I don't blast out your eardrums. So there's a question here about one of my favorite topics, selling with Sabina. Where in London would you say has the best afternoon tea? Also, what time of the year is best for a British Isles cruise to reduce the chance of stormy seas? So in terms of afternoon tea, there are many, many amazing places, some of which are incredibly expensive. People who are coming to London sort of the first time or looking to go to afternoon tea sort of for the first time in London, I tend to steer them towards Fortnum & Mason's. The reason being, Fortnum & Mason is such an iconic store. It has such a long history. It has obviously the, it's got the royal seal, as an official supply. The store itself is very beautiful. It sells all its own products. It's a great place to visit, but also it's got this very iconic history with afternoon tea. So it's up on the, is it the 4th floor? There's kind of a beautiful tea room which was opened in its day not that long ago, or it probably is now actually, but it was opened by the late Queen Elizabeth II, now Queen Camilla, and by Catherine as well. So all those 3 generations are of the leading woman in the royal family, and it's a beautiful place to go. So that's kind of an iconic place. It's very popular. So at certain times of the year, particularly like this time of the year, it's kind of sold out. So you have to plan. But that's always where I send people. The Ritz is also a very famous afternoon tea. I found it a little bit stuffy. You do have to wear things like jacket and tie. It's quite formal. The Langham, I really like. Now, the Langham sort of makes claims that they were sort of the first hotel to really serve afternoon tea. Afternoon tea was originally created by the Duchess of Bedfordshire. Was it Bob? Yeah, I think it was Dr. Bedfordshire. Then so it's more commercialized there. I really like it there. But I tend to steer people towards Fortnum & Mason. So in terms of best time of the year for a British Isles cruise, so the British Isles cruise only really operate a fairly limited time of the year. So they tend to be, you're really talking sort of about May to about September-ish time. Obviously, July, August is the best weather you're going to get. It's also the school holiday time. So you also may want to be fairly cautious about which cruise line you choose, because there's a chance, unless you're traveling with kids, so you want loads of kids on your cruise, I'll be traveling with family and you want lots of kids for kids to having the kids club and play with. But if you're looking for a more adult cruise, bear in mind July, August is very popular time, family time. But July, August is when you're going to have the nicest weather, less chance of rain and stuff. So that's kind of the balance. September, so towards the end of the season, you often have quite nice weather. The schools go back. So if you're looking for less kids and stuff, that's quite a good time to go. The seas, if you're doing a full around the thing, it's again, like all things, it's kind of hit and miss, but that would be the time that I would recommend. Lee, I don't know if this, that's fine. Feel happy to ask me non-cruising questions. This looked like a train cruise. I saw a video on Sojourny Vietnam. I haven't heard of that one. I haven't heard of them at all. So one of the things I would suggest is take a look at Trek Trendy's channel, because he covers, he covers mostly flights. He covers a lot of train stuff, and of course now he covers cruising as well. But if that's a good train journey, he's probably covered it. And I don't think he has, because I love his channel and his videos, and I don't recognize that one. So sorry, I couldn't help you more. SL asked me, how did it rank? It ranked pretty highly. It's the Savoy is such an iconic thing. It's a very beautiful venue. Being a festive afternoon tea, it was great. So it's pretty high up on there. Brian asking the question, as a first-time solo traveler, can you suggest an itinerary? So Brian, that's quite hard to do without knowing more. A lot of it depends on what sort of experience you're looking for on board. Do you want it to be more formal? Do you want to be very heavily on enrichment? Do you want it more party-like? And so on. But one of the things that I say, it also depends where you're coming from. One of the things I tend to recommend for first-time solo travelers is think about the 3 most popular regions in the world to cruise. They're the most popular for a reason. First of all, because what you can go and see is great. Secondly, because there's a wide choice from ultra luxury to affordable mass market. Thirdly, in the ports, because it's quite developed, there's lots to do. And fourthly, even if you aren't local, they're linked to be with good gateways, so gateway airports, etc. Those three are the Caribbean, which is about half of all cruises take place in the Caribbean worldwide. So mostly sailing out of Florida, but you can sail out of other places, like I did recently out of New York, or Galveston's a big port, for example, Tampa. Tampa's, of course, in the Florida. So there, I would also say that you have the Eastern Mediterranean, the Western Mediterranean, but I quite like the Southern Mediterranean. It tends to be a little bit longer, but you go to ports which are a little bit less manic in terms of numbers and visitors and stuff. So you might go into Curacao, you go to places like Willemstad, Aruba, kind of all these sort of places, Barbados, and so on. So that's the first one. The second one, which is very good, which is not the second most popular, but Alaska is a great itinerary to go to. Again, because there's great things to do. Also, because there's a lot to do in the port. So if you're a little bit worried about, I want to also have lots of things to do. I'm not sure, as a solo traveler, I don't want to necessarily have a lot of time on my hands to myself, perhaps. Alaska's a great one. The third one, of course, is the Mediterranean. Again, you have the Eastern Mediterranean, the Western Mediterranean. I often recommend people go with the Western Mediterranean, out of Barcelona or out of Civitavecchia for Rome, because you get to tick off a lot of iconic places. You can see Barcelona, you can see Rome, you can see Florence, you can see Pisa, and so on. So those are the ones I recommend. Then the key, so whichever kind of makes sense. Then the really key thing is to decide what sort of experience you want, because that'll determine the kind of which cruise line is right. As a solo traveler, as you've done any stuff, you'll know in most cases you're going to have to assume that you're paying the price of two people. So there are some solo options. I have a video. So if you just search on the channel solo about how you can get better deals, avoid some of those supplements, and so on. So hopefully that helps, Brian. Cruise for everyone. Good to see you here. Who has the best buffet casual food offering in the premium and luxury classes? Okay, so without a shadow of a doubt, in the sort of more luxury side, Explorer Journeys definitely have the best. They have their Emporium sort of marketplace, which is kind of a more food hall concept. A lot of the food is prepared, to order. So, and also it's just it's a very nice venue. They're open breakfast, lunch, and dinner, where a lot of the more luxury, ultra luxury certainly don't have the buffet open for dinner. So that they are really, really good. And obviously, if you go ultra luxury, you're on a Seabourn or a Regent, the buffets are kind of good, but they don't really necessarily stand out. The quality of the food's very good, but in terms of standout, I think Explorer Journeys has sort of set the gold standard there. Now, in the premium class, so between sort of celebrity, so premium is really celebrity, Cunard, Holland America, Princess, Disney's in the kind of premium side there. I'm not sure that any really stand out massively. They're all pretty similar, and they all follow a pretty similar concept. And people have different views, so I've had very good experience on celebrity on Holland America, for example. But probably the one that does stand out, which is also in this category, is Virgin. So Virgin Voyages, they claim they don't have a buffet. They have more of a that food hall concept. They don't have as much choice as you would get once you go luxury with Explorer Journeys. But I quite like their approach. So they have the different stations. As I said, not as many. They also have kind of a grab and go concept where they have stuff that you can grab and go, which Norwegians actually picked up as well, but not to the same degree. So for me, if I was forced to choose one, I would probably choose Virgin. I know a lot of people find it a bit limiting, and I would choose Explorer Journey as the kind of the standouts in that side there. Warren asking me a question around how often do you factor in other requirements such as inoculations, visas? I assume you're meaning, Warren, when I'm choosing a cruise. So I guess I've learned probably the hard way. Not enough is the answer when it comes to inoculations. So I had booked, I really, really wanted to do this itinerary. and I'd booked it a long time ago, and I'd booked a West Africa trip on Regent, which went from Barcelona and ended up in Cape Town. It was almost a month long, calling it lots of ports. It was really fantastic. And I hadn't really thought it through because closer to about final payment time, just after final payment time, there's a notification saying that you had to have a yellow fever vaccine to go to 2 of the ports, to get off the ship in 2 of the ports. And actually, when the ship ended in South Africa, the South African regulations were that if you had called on any place that required a yellow fever vaccine, you had to have a yellow fever vaccine. Now, I did discover that you could get a certificate saying that you didn't need one. Now, what happened is I spoke to my oncologist and I spoke to my doctor, and they were adamant that I should not have a yellow fever vaccine. Yellow fever vaccines, certainly in the UK, I don't know if it's different other places, are strongly, most of the medical profession recommend against them if you're over 60. It's a live vaccine. Certainly my oncologist was adamant I shouldn't have it and would give me a certificate, which I checked with Regent, and they said that, recently they'd done a similar itinerary and the ports had accepted it. But I didn't want to go to a place where it's serious enough that you need a yellow fever vaccine without a yellow fever vaccine. So I actually had to cancel that trip. Now, luckily, Regent allowed me to switch it to the one that I did, the Caribbean one. So probably the answer is not enough, because often I don't really think about, I hadn't really thought about that, which I should have. So on terms of visas, that doesn't really put me off. Now, one of the advantages that we have, I guess, living in London is all the embassies are in London. So anyway, if you need a visa, I can do it directly with the embassies myself. So like I got a Chinese visa, I've had a Vietnamese visa, Egyptian visa, all those kind of visas that proper visas you have to get before you go. Because some of them you can just buy when you arrive, as you know. So that doesn't tend to put me off. And I know in the past you can use some, agencies like CIBT that most of the cruise lines recommend. It's interesting actually because for the Holland America trip that I'm doing, both for my group cruise coming up, which is Holland America, and also my South America, they have a partnership with CIBT where you can go to CIBT and you can input your passport you have, you input the cruise, and it then tells you if you need any visas, including ETAs. Now these days, as many of you probably know, you need those electronic travel authorization things increasingly. So the UK, if you come into the UK, you need one. I know for my Australia one, I've had to redo it. Going to the US, going to Canada, Europe is introducing one. So those I don't worry about. So probably the inoculation ones, hopefully that answers it. Not enough is the thing. Lou's suggesting it enjoys the buffet in the Edge class ship. Let's have a look. I think there's some chat there. Okay. Another question from Lou has answered that. He's done Istanbul, but didn't stay there. Okay, but thanks for answering that. Thanks for answering that. Before I answer the next one, Paul and Carol here. Great to see you here, Paul and Carol. Of course, you're heading down to do your big trip, aren't you? Your 30-something day trip. So just a reminder, if you don't know, I'm sure most of you do, Paul and Carol love to travel, have a very good YouTube channel, very popular YouTube channel, run lots of group cruises. I went on there. In fact, I have something I won from Paul and Carol's group cruise on my little display thing here. What is it, May or May? So I was very excited to win that in one of the trivia questions. Anyway, have a great trip, Paul and Carol. And of course, I look forward to following that. So let's jump back to the question. Cruise for everyone. Who are the most family-friendly premium line and why? Okay, so just to clarify for everybody and also how I'm going to answer it. So premium category in the cruise industry is defined as Princess, Holland America, Virgin, did I say Princess? Cunard, did I leave everyone in there? And Disney, okay, is also kind of in that premium category. Now, when I do videos around this, people say, oh, but it's not premium, but that's just how it's defined by. So obviously within that, by definition, the most family-friendly premium line is actually Disney, because they are heavily targeted at families, but of course they're incredibly expensive. Obviously, there's all that big immersion, and people may not be massive big Disney fans. So I would say of those, the line that is the most active, there's two lines that are most actively looking at recruiting families are, first of all, Princess, although they probably skewing a little bit towards multi-generational travel, but they're new ships with the Sphere class, which is Sun Princess and Star Princess. Those are definitely targeting much more families. There's more family cabins on board. The program, the kids program, the kids clubs are very expansive. So Princess is really leaning into more and more families. And Celebrity is also leaning more and more into families, particularly with their Edge class ships. So those are the two that are definitely there. Now, Holland America does a pretty good thing with the HAL Club, but it's not really. It's still a more older couples crowd. Obviously, Virgin is completely out because that's 18 only plus. So I would probably focus a lot on Princess, particularly those Sphere class ships, really big ships. They are big ships, but they are definitely much more family focused. I look some other tips in terms of places to stay in Istanbul. So that's great to know. Love the ship model behind you. Yes, this is great. I get asked about this model every now and again. So I got this quite a long time ago. So that's Queen Mary 2. I also have up top there the QE2, the original, the QE2. They're fantastic. Now, actually, somebody recently had found someone that had started selling the similar models to these again, and I think they'd found them on eBay in the US. But when I got these like ages ago, 15 years ago, something like that, they weren't that crazy expensive. Let's have a look. Traveling Fool, 1996. Solo cruiser here. All I've experienced is Norwegian Cruise Line. I got a January 27th Antarctic cruise with Celebrity. The solo program is awesome. How different will solo program be? So it's quite interesting, actually, that you are so enthusiastic about Celebrity and solos, because I get a lot of messages from solo travelers very unhappy with Celebrity. So what we're seeing happen with Celebrity is, other cruise lines are sort of doing this, is it's very clear that Celebrity sort of only want a certain amount of solos. It would appear, because I don't know this for definite, it would appear that Celebrity only want a certain amount of solo travelers on their ships. Now, on their new Edge class ships, they have solo cabins, not many of them, but they have them. But certainly if you try and book, so if you're looking for a cruise and you put in, say, for 2 people, it might throw up a whole bunch of cabins. Someone messaged me, one of my patrons messaged me this week. So they were looking at Aqua, they put in 2 people, load of cabins came up. They then changed that for 1 person because they're actually traveling solo. Number of cabins dramatically disappeared and the prices went through the roof. So it wasn't even just 100%. So it's kind of dumb because someone could just book for 2 people and then only have 1 person pitch up. So what it appears is they certainly only want a certain amount of solos, because I guess if you think about the mechanics of a ship, is you don't want a whole ship, from a financial perspective, you don't want loads of solos because you've only got 1 set of people spending money on drinks and photographs and shore excursions and so on. What we're even seeing, so I'm looking at a little side, I will come back to this question, is what we're also seeing on some lines. For example, I've had people contact me, and I've also seen it online. In some Holland America settings, people who've booked a cabin, a couple who booked a cabin, have been bumped out of the cabin they booked to another cabin. And the reason for that is the ship is very full, and people are looking to book a cabin for 3 people or 4 people, family, and they've chosen a cabin which can hold 3 or 4 people, and they've been moved to a cabin that's designed for only 2 people. So this is the thing about, I guess, optimizing it. Anyway, as a complete aside, so Celebrity program is, Celebrity program is nothing like the Norwegian, where you've got the separate lounge and so on. So if you've ever done Norwegian in the solo studios, as you know, you've got the lounge for solos. You won't have that at all. What you will have on Celebrity is they will have suggested solo meetups, but they are unhosted. So they don't have anybody that hosts the solo meetup, but they will say solo meetup, depending on, I don't know what ship you're on, I'm think it goes down to Antarctica. I think it might be one of the Solstice class ships, but it will say in whatever bar or whatever. So so that will kind of be it. So it's really up to Solar to kind of connect and stuff. So you won't find it as organized. They won't have a social hostess organizing hosted meetups, dining and so on. So it will be quite different. So you're doing the January 27th Antarctica cruise. So you're doing, I guess, South America with the sail down, sail past in Antarctica. So I hope you have a great time. But certainly you'll find it a much less structured solo program. And unless on those particular sailings they have hosted, but it's normally unhosted. So it's kind of up to Solo to then kind of connect. Let's have a look. Here we go. Thanks for writing the word question. I'm hoping there's quite a lot of chat, so I'm hoping I'm not missing any of the question. Interested in some of the Alaska cruises that HX offers, especially the one that visits the Aleutians. How would this compare to a more classic Alaska cruise? So just to clarify for those who don't know, so Hurtigruten used to have two divisions, the ones that sail up North America, and then they used to have Hurtigruten Expeditions. Now the ship, the company hit a couple of financial challenges, I think that's a polite way of putting it, and they split the company off. They're both actually owned by private equity now, actually private equity in the UK, interestingly, but anyway. So Hurtigruten now only focuses on those Norway sailings, and the expedition group has been renamed HX, so they focus on that. So certainly I think I know the cruise you looked at, because I've had a look at this cruise. I remember it's a 2-week cruise or 10-day cruise. I can't remember how long it is. So what's very interesting is how it differs is a couple of ways, Andrew retiring soon, is first of all, if it's the one I looked at, you'll find it doesn't have any of the traditional places. So it doesn't call on Ketchikan, doesn't call on Juneau, doesn't call on Skagway. So you're avoiding those kind of normal kind of classic cruise places. And it will focus on much more remote places. So you won't do traditional excursions. So you won't dock somewhere and go off and do a traditional excursion. You will do stuff on Zodiacs or hosted by the expedition team. So you'll have an expedition team on board that will run talks, give you immersion, but then they will take you out on the Zodiacs, either Zodiac touring, to perhaps try and find wildlife, bears or whatever, or you'll do some landings and they will escort you. So you won't kind of book separate excursions. So if you were doing a classic Alaska cruise, you know, you'd go on Celebrity or Seabourn or Norwegian or whatever, you know, the line would offer you a series of excursions which you'd pay extra for. So you might go on in Skagway, you might go on the Yukon train, which I always recommend you should do. Or in Juneau, you might do a helicopter ride up to the Mendel Glacier or go hike to the Mendel Glacier. These will all be kind of in an expedition way. So it'll be very focused with an expedition team dedicated. They will host those tours. So that's kind of included in the price, which is why the price is also that bit higher. Obviously, it's a much smaller ship. And I'm trying to remember, do they do the moored there? I'm trying to remember which ship they do. I think it's a great itinerary. I've had a look at that and I really would like to do that. It's on my list of to-dos. Hopefully that's giving you enough information on that one. Ludi, hope that's the right way to pronounce it. You mentioned Whole America will be going to Machu Picchu next year as part of their South American trip. When will that be? We recently Whole America after being away for a while. Enjoy them. Yes, so basically, I'm going to just have a look at that. So basically, I'm on a trip. The trip that I'm on, Ludi, leaves Buenos Aires on the 8th of March and ends in Florida on the 8th of April. So 2 weeks, it's 2 weeks to get from Buenos Aires to let's call it Santiago. It's actually San Antonio, but Santiago. Then in Santiago, I think it's about a week later, it stops in Lima. Well, actually stops at the port. I think it's called Callao, but it's called Lima there. So the ship then stays there for 3 nights, I think it is. And then you could book very crazy prices, but you can then book a Machu Picchu extension where I think you're away for 2 nights, if I remember correctly. So you then get off the ship, you fly to, I can't remember the name of the place, sorry. You fly to the place, you spend overnight, you have some tours and things, you then get the train. Now, depending on whether you've gone gold or silvered, the type of train you go. One's all very shishi with food and stuff. The other's more observation stuff. You then do the Machu Picchu. You come back from Machu Picchu, the train back, another night in the hotel. You then fly back and rejoin the ship. So that's how they do it. So they only have limited numbers sold out. I really want to do that. So I was nagging because they didn't release it till like a couple of months ago. So I was checking every day, nagging my travel agent. So the day it came on, I could book it. So it's waitlisted only at the moment. So they can only do so many people. So I'm very excited about it. Of course, it's a very expensive way of doing it because you're still paying for your ship and then you're paying for the tour. But to me, that's a great way of seeing Machu Picchu. And of course, got a train, which I'm very excited about. So it's roughly sort of towards the third part of March. And I'm guessing what will happen is a lot of people will do the Buenos Aires to Santiago. I suspect there'll be quite a lot of people changing Santiago to that second leg because that second leg has the Machu Picchu extension and it has, of course, Panama Canal. So I suspect that got two big highlights for people. So hopefully that answers your question. Patrick, Cunard has this reputation of being the height of luxury, but has history passed them by? Would you say, for example, Regent Crystal or real luxury? Okay, this is a great point because in reality, you're 100% right. Cunard has a reputation to be the height of luxury. It isn't and never has been, in my opinion. So it does have this reputation. The reputation is heavily built on a very small part of the experience, which is the Queen's Grill. So Queen's Grill is kind of, I always describe a Cunard ship. So if you take like Queen Mary II, Queen Elizabeth, whatever, and the new ships, it runs like an aeroplane, if you like. So you have an aeroplane, you've got economy, you've got premium economy, this is up to a long haul. Economy, or coach, I guess you go in the US, premium economy, business class, and first class. And that's basically how Cunard runs. So you've got the equivalent of economy, as it were, is Britannia. So you have very affordable cabins, from inside cabins, which are incredibly affordable, very comparable prices to the rest of cruising. You've got ocean view, you've got balconies of various grades. Then their equivalent to premium economy is Britannia Club. Now, Britannia Club on Queen Mary II is just a section within the main dining room, but on the other ships, it's a separate dining room. Then the equivalent of club on an aeroplane is Princess Grill, which then has a specific restaurant. It has it's effectively mini suites. So mini suites on other cruise lines. If you go on Celebrity, like Aqua Class mini suite is kind of Princess Grill. So, but normally other cruise lines, Holland America would call it a mini suite or whatever. Then you have there effectively what the first class is Queen's Grill. Queen's Grill is where they have the suites, which go, of course, from massive big suites. Like on here, on Queen Mary II, it's double-decker, 2-level suites. And in Queen's Grill, it's, the restaurant is very upmarket. You have 3 waiters serving you. It's all silver service. You can order off menu. They do stuff at your table side. It's all very, very, upmarket. But that's in the restaurant. But the rest of the ship is pretty standard. It's pretty much like going on Celebrity or Holland America in reality. The quality of the food in Britannia and so on is comparable to the others. But of course, they do advertise on that glamour. So, people think of Cunard and they think of movie stars and fabulous Queen Mary and all that stuff. But in the day, you had kind of, steerage or whatever, and so on. So I must say, the first time Mark and I ever went on Cunard was in 2005. And we went on QE2, I'll bring it up there. And we had expected to step into this world of incredible luxury. And we stepped in and was like, oh my God, this is not particularly luxurious. Now, maybe the ship was a little bit dated at that time. But, it is not, Cunard is not luxury at all, unless you go Queen's Grill. And then you're paying top dollar. And for the same amount of money, you're absolutely right. You can go on Regent, you can go on Crystal, you can go on Silversea, but you're buying a different experience. Obviously, for the same money on Cunard, you're going to get a massive big cabin, you're going to get a butler, you get it in Queen's Grill. And Queen's Grill is probably still the best dining you're going to get in terms of quality, in terms of the service and stuff. But you're right. If you're looking for luxury today, the categories, ultra luxury, your Regent and Crystal, Silversea, Seabourn, and of course you've got the yachts coming out. You've got your small ship luxuries, you've got your Vikings, your Explorer Journeys, Windstar. Then you've got premium, and premium, I would say in reality, there's if you're going certainly in a balcony cabin, inside cabin, Cunard versus Celebrity versus Honda America is not really that different. And in fact, a lot of people feel that things like Celebrity have better food, more options. Then you obviously have your more mass market. So, I do like Cunard. I like Cunard for the transatlantic and community too. So I've got one booked next year. I wouldn't really book. I've done a lot of Cunard stuff, but these days I would not really go Cunard other than transatlantic, unless I was looking for a very British kind of experience. And if you go Britannia, particularly on these ships, or that you get the very dramatic Art Deco thing. If you want really good enrichment, so you're buying it you're booking it not just for luxury. In reality, if you're thinking, a lot of people go on Cunard and get disappointed because it's not as luxurious as they think it's going to be. Anyway, so let's hopefully. I don't want to slag off Celebrity a lot, but no, Cunard a lot. Sarah, good to see you here. I think I said it earlier. I just bought my first transatlantic Celebrity from Rome to Fort Lauderdale. Nice. Any suggestions for a trip in Gibraltar or Madeira? So in Gibraltar, I would go up the rock. You get incredible views. But if there's quite nice combination tours, Sarah, which is one you can do inside the rock. So if you're quite a history buff, you could do a tour which you go up the cable car. You see the great views from the top there. You can see right across to Africa, see the ships down below. And then you go into the rock. And so some of them are natural caves, some of them are dug, which is where various battles were during the wars. They've protected Gibraltar. It's really, really interesting. And all the stories, and they tell you quite nice stories. There is another tour, which sometimes includes inside the rock, but often you're going to St. Michael's Caves. So it's not a terribly long walk from down into St. Michael's Caves, which are all the stalagmites and stalactites, can remember which one goes down and which goes up. There's big lighting and all that sort of stuff. They're pretty good. That's what I would recommend in Gibraltar. Do I have a very strong recommendation in Madeira? I mean, what a lot of people do there is they will do the, what are they called? The wicker baskets going down the hill. I'm too chicken to do them, to be honest. But that's one of the most iconic things. You'll go up and you'll go on these little baskets. The guys take you down there. I've done a couple of cycling tours around Madeira. It's very kind of hilly and stuff. But the iconic thing to do is that if you want to really tick off something, that's what I would do. Is what you do. Can I just make a comment on Cunard? People are talking about dress code. Cunard dress code is not anymore what people think it is, because in reality, formal nights are actually optional now. They used to be required. So nowadays, you can wear smart casual on formal nights. Although if you're particularly on an ex-UK selling, you'll find a lot of people wearing a tuxedo or black tie, depending on what you want to call it. You can wear a suit and tie, but in reality, it's now optional. And the optional is smart casual, which is a sleeved shirt and smart trousers. So you could wear a polo shirt and slacks if you wanted to. I'm talking about the guys here, obviously. Well, girls can wear them as well, I guess. But it's no longer as strict. So you can get into a restaurant on formal night in Cunard in smart casual wear. If you look at the dress code, they've changed it. But certainly if you're going on a transatlantic, or if you're going on an ex-UK selling especially, you'll find people still really, really dress up. Someone did recently, I was talking to someone recently that did back-to-back transatlantic, where they did from Southampton to New York, and the dress code was, people with black tie tuxedos. The other way around, there was actually more US travelers, and they said it was noticeable that the amount of kind of tuxedos and black ties going the other way was dramatically different. So anyway. Thank you, Jeffrey. This is my huge, big hobby horse. I'm so pleased someone asked this. I see many posts confusing high tea and afternoon tea. Even cruise lines get it wrong, but is there a cruise line that actually does offer high tea? Jeffrey, I have not come across any cruise line that serves proper high tea. For those who don't know what Jeffrey's talking about, afternoon tea is for posh people. High tea was for the working class, basically. So afternoon tea was, as I mentioned earlier, if you were here earlier, it was created by the Duchess of Bedfordshire. And I need to double check my facts on that. was it? I think it was Bedfordshire. Anyway, very high class. She used to get peckish in the afternoon, started by getting her servants to bring her little finger sandwiches and little sweet treats. She then started inviting her friends to that. It kind of took off and became a big kind of thing. But it's really for rich people and upper class. So it was all about nice little sandwiches, nice little dainty cakes, little scones. And it was a way of tiding you over between sort of lunch and big formal dinners you were having at 8 o'clock at night when you'd get all dressed up and have your butlers and whatever serving you. High tea is what working people would have when they came home from work. So it was late afternoon, reality, early evening, and it was a big substantial meal. You came back from the factories, from the fields, you were hungry. It was a big substantial meal. So many cruise lines, many US hotels, and it does my head in, call it high tea. I know, so in the US, it's become called high tea. It is incorrect. It's only high tea if you have a substantial main course, effectively. Now, it's very interesting. As you can tell, I'm passionate about this. Let's look up the menu here. So, for example, what was very interesting in the Savoy is they and I don't think you might be able to see this. Not sure if you can see that or not. Probably a lot of focus. On the menu, for example, they had afternoon tea. You could have afternoon tea, or you could convert that into a high tea. So the afternoon tea, you had your sandwiches. If you were here, you saw the picture, you had your little fiddly cakes, then you had your scones. Afternoon tea, you would get your sandwiches, savory bites, blah, blah, blah. But you would then get a duck breast with beetroot and blackberries. You know, it's very upmarket. Or you would get a fish dish. So you had a main course to it. So anyway, thank you, Jeffrey. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about this. So afternoon tea and high tea are different things. So when you go to, like, I was in New York recently, and it was the Intercontinental stuff. We're advertising high tea, and it was not high tea. It was afternoon tea. Lots of cruise lines call it high tea. I have not found any cruise line, and that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't one, that does real high tea, because you should have like a big hearty main course there. So thank you, Jeffrey, for letting me rant on my one of my hobby horses. Caroline very kindly said that I'm not love Trek 20, but not as good as Gary. Thank you very much. I think Trek 20 is great. I really like. Well, I've never met him in person, but we often message each other, particularly when he's on trips and I'm on trips and stuff. We kind of compare some notes as well. He's a really nice guy. If you haven't watched him, he's great. Kenneth, didn't miss that. Remember, please write the word question so I don't miss it, but I didn't miss Kenneth's question. I would like to take a Cunard transatlantic to New York this spring and summer. Never been on a cruise, but I'm computer savvy. Should I use a travel agent or the Cunard site? Pros and cons, which one? Okay, Kenneth, I will also put, make a note for myself. I'm going to put a link to an article on this topic in this note. So maybe like 5-10 minutes after this, if you want to dive into a bit more, I'll put a link to an article, which also recommends some travel agents, by the way. So basically, Kenneth, I would always personally, even though I do, 10 to 11 cruises a year, I've done it. I book all my cruises through a travel agent Sarah. And a couple of things. The article dives into a bit more, but a couple of headline things. First of all, cruise lines will never undercut travel agents. Travel agents, depending on the country, still account for between 60 and 70% of all cruise bookings are through travel agents. In some countries, that percentage is increasing. The travel agents are incredibly important to cruise lines. They spend a lot of money and effort with travel agents. And the reason they're keen on travel agents is because travel agents can spend time with their clients, making sure that they understand what they want, what their budget is, they get on the right line, the right ship, the right cabin. So basically, they'll help guide people through the process. So it's more than just being computer savvy. Now, obviously, you want to go Cunard transatlantic and so on and so forth. You can watch YouTube videos and figure out, do you want to go Britannia inside cabin? Do you want to go Britannia Grill, et cetera, et cetera. But they will never undercut. You will never get a lower price by going direct. So unlike, say, if you book with the Hilton, you will not get a better price going direct. Now, sometimes you can get a better price by going through a travel agent, because sometimes cruise lines will work with travel agents to clear cabins. They don't want to advertise it on the site, because they know if they advertise on the site, everyone will do what Gary Bembridge and other people recommend, is they'll fair track. The minute they bring prices down on their site. Anyone who's booked at the higher price will start phoning them, contact them, asking for a fare match. So if they are looking to clear cabins, bulk of cabins on a setting, they sometimes give more attractive prices to travel agents because it's hidden, if you like. Now, these days that ships are selling quite full, and particularly on transatlantics, which generally sell full, that's less likely. But sometimes you might find there's a promotion there with extra onboard credit or bits and pieces like that. So you're going to get that if you go through a travel agent, but they can help guide you, particularly for a first-time buyer. So you're never going to pay more, which is one of the things that people worry about, and they will guide you through. Now, also occasionally, and I don't know if this Cunard is, but I know I've had it with Sarah, is you'll say, right, I want an inside cabin or midships or whatever. Sometimes she'll come back and say, I can see on the site what cabins are available, but sometimes she can come back in her system and say, actually, she'll see more cabins. I've just seen that sometimes on some cruise lines, is they will show you a selection of cabins, but travel agents can normally see all the cabins that are available. So you might find sometimes cabins that aren't showing up online are showing up to them. Now, obviously, you can phone Cunard as well. Then if you do see Cunard prices go down, you can talk to the travel agent. They can see if they can get you extra onboard credit or an upgrade or whatever. Cunard are very difficult when it comes to fare match. They don't really like to be seen to doing that. Sometimes through a travel agent, you might get something there. So I would always recommend it. I don't know if you're doing to New York, maybe UK based. I would strongly recommend travel agent Sarah. But in that article, Kenneth, I dive a little bit into the pros and cons, and I do have some suggestions on travel agents as well. If you're looking for a specific travel, because finding the right, a lot of people can come back to me and say, like, my travel agent is rubbish. So I also don't encourage people to go to. I like to encourage people to work with travel agents like travel agent Sarah, Walter, Gary, and so on in the US, who largely work for themselves. So like Sarah and Walter, for example, they're part of they work for themselves. They live or die based on how happy their clients are, and they're part of a travel group who does a lot of the back office, negotiate the deals, do the billing, have all the licenses and the, I don't know, whatever else you need to have. But Sarah, Walter, and so on, they live or die by how happy people are who book. So I discourage people from going through more kind of companies, if you like, where people are employees. That's just my particular view. Let's have a look. I feel there was a. Okay, so Randy's talking about they're doing Crystal. So Crystal, I think will be great doing that South America trip for sure. Dog's dad, very cute looking dog there. My wife and older sister, active seniors, want to go to Egypt on a river cruise. I'm not comfortable with that choice. Am I over concerned? Okay, so Egypt is certainly I can understand why you're concerned. I would strongly encourage you, if you are looking at them going, is to go with a company perhaps like Viking, for example, where they will do a lot of hand-holding. So Viking, for example, will meet them at the airport. Now, one of the things I seem to remember with Viking, but don't quote me on this, but you can double check this, is if you book the whole thing through Viking, I seem to remember there was Viking reps before you hit immigration, and they will help walk you through the immigration process. You've got to get a visa when you arrive and stuff, whatever, or if you haven't got one before, they will then kind of escort you to a hotel. They'll have chosen very careful hotels with good security. Everything you do will be within that bubble. So all the land touring you do in Cairo, escorting you through the internal flights down to Luxor on the ship, all the tours will have the right security. They will also help, when you go on tours, warn you how do you deal with the vendors and stuff. It can be quite pushy and so on. But there is some security challenges with it. But I would strongly encourage that. Look at a line like Viking, so very protective, very organized, and so on. I did it with Ama Waterways, very similar. They met you kind of at the airport, so from that point of arrival right to getting to the airport, they were kind of with me the group the whole way. You're also traveling with a group of people, and so on. So the other thing I would say, though, is why don't you also look at escorted tours? So I don't know where you're based. I'm guessing calling it active seniors suggests to me you might be US based. Take a look at a company like Tauk, who do incredible hosted tours. So the advantage with that is those hosted tours will often start from, from if you're flying out from wherever. Often the host may join you right at the very beginning of the tour. So even through that whole process, they're with you. So again, you're in kind of this bubble, as it were. That's what I would recommend is an active tour. So you've got Tauk, I guess in the UK, you've got things like Saga, Titan, Abercrombie and Kent, those kind of things. That's what I would recommend. So you're within kind of that sort of bubble. Right, we're rapidly running out. So let's see if I can do a couple of quick fire things. Elizabeth Hurley, I'm sure with that name, I think I've said before, hopefully when you phone up, you get all sorts of people think it's the Elizabeth Hurley and get lots of perks from that. Anyway, we have a Viking expedition to Antarctica for 2028. What is the best time to visit during the cruising season? Personally, Elizabeth, I like the beginning of the season. So I like November. It's full of ice. I mean, it's more risky because of the ice. It's very pristine. So even the penguin colonies and stuff aren't full of penguin poo yet. A lot of people prefer to go a little bit later, sort of as you head into January time, because the little chicks are more out. But certainly at the beginning of the season is also mating season. So particularly if you go to like South Georgia and stuff, you're going to see a lot of wildlife out on the beaches and stuff like that. If you go right at the end of the season, which I've also done before, the colonies can be a little bit smaller because they've basically sort of head back out to sea ready for winter. But I really like the beginning of the season a lot. I really, really like that a lot. Let's have a look. So people saying they actually preferred Virgin over that. Where do you get the QC? I think I've answered that one. It's quite difficult, but look on eBay. Let's do one more quick question before we wrap. Steinwald Martin, good to see you here as always. As Navigator is now going to remain with Regent Seven Seas. So yes, for those who don't know, Navigator was going to leave the fleet. They were due to join Crescent Seas, be revamped. They then pulled out of their leases for both Insignia from Oceania and Navigator. Regent has said that Navigator is going to go through revamp and stay with the line. Do you think it's worth a try to compare to other ships of the fleet? What are the quirks? Navigator, no, unless there's a specific itinerary. The Navigator does have some quite interesting itineraries, but it's a bit of older ship. I quite like the ship. It has quite a lot of vibration, so you want to avoid booking a cabin towards the back. Even if you go to the buffet at the back. Or you go like veranda, it's called a veranda, yeah, or you go to Sedimari, there's quite a lot of vibration at the back, so kind of you don't want to be camera at the back. So it's kind of a dated ship. It's quite old. They're going to revamp it, but I would only go on it if there's a very specific itinerary. So I was booked on Navigator because I really wanted that West Africa itinerary, but I wouldn't go just to compare to the other ships in the fleet because it costs the same, and the other ships basically are much better. It's kind of very quick. You don't get as much choice. You don't have as many, especially dining. The theatre is smaller. It's a much smaller ship. It's 450 passengers ish. It might be 435. I can't remember the exact number. So I wouldn't go just to try it. No, I'm very interested because I can't see the Navigator will stay with them for massively very, very long. Oceania, Jeff asking a question. Oceania have afternoon tea, very good. Hal have afternoon tea, less good. But the Oceania afternoon tea is fantastic. So we have run out of time. I know there's some questions here that I've missed. I will have a look at those questions. Hopefully we can get to answer them next week. Just a reminder, next week I will do a live stream. It will be at the usual time, so 5 o'clock UK, 1 o'clock Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific time. That will be the last live stream of 2025. So I hope that you can join me there. I'll hopefully get to answer those other questions. So have a great rest of the weekend. Thanks so much for joining me. Thanks for the fantastic questions and take care.